Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show. This week, could it be the sky is not falling? No, the sky is not falling. Yes, there are some pretty big storm clouds on the horizon. To further torture this metaphor, but I'll explain why we can weather this really. Plus, we dive into some numbers. No, they're not head-to-head polls, but I think they'll back some of you off the ledge. Alex, where do you want to get started?
So first of all, the avalanche of emails, comments, etc. to our last few shows keep coming in. So thanks everybody who've been writing in. I actually want to tee us up with a response from John in South Dakota. And John's written in before. We've talked about his stuff. But his point was, quote, "It's time for Democrats and democracy defenders to circle the wagons and fire out and not in. If we fire in and not out, we will surely lose this fall. Democrats need to grow a spine and have President Biden's back. What say you guys?" And Joe, before you get into it, this was pretty much the tone for almost all the messages we've gotten. And I just want to point something out for folks, especially people listening to this podcast know, but there is a massive, massive disconnect that we are seeing between the grassroots energy, like people writing into the pod, people chipping in $20 to a congressional candidate, people giving the, our friends at the Lincoln Project. That's blowing up. And versus what we're seeing in the media, which is just this kind of cycle of doom. And Trippi, to your point about the sky not falling, there is that disconnect. But where do you see this all going?
Look, the truth is there's a clear path to victory either way, with Biden staying in or him making a decision to pass the torch. But the longer it takes to unify the party around one of those two paths, the more, our chances are going to be hurt. But take the new ABC poll where they keep, CNN, everybody's, the pundits are all talking about, 54% of Biden supporters say he should withdraw. Larger numbers of all Americans obviously believe that once you throw in all the Republicans, et cetera. But, but the fact is, it's a 46-46 dead heat. In other words, 54% of Biden supporters say he should withdraw. Guess what? They're all still voting for him. Why is that happening? And I mean, it's the same thing. I can go through all the other oh shit numbers, the sky's falling numbers in that poll. The reason is pretty simple. We're in a dead heat with Trump, and the majority of Americans, 53% of independents, say Trump is a threat to American democracy and Biden isn't. So, that's what the choice has been that we've all faced this entire campaign, that Trump's a threat to democracy and Biden isn't a threat to democracy, but he's too old. That's the decision point. That's the contrast. That's been the whole thing that we've been talking about. Guess what? Debate didn't change any of that. In fact, it reinforced exactly that conundrum. The threat of Biden, the threat of Trump to democracy, his promise of retribution and revenge was compounded, now with the Supreme Court granting him essentially complete immunity to do it, versus the Biden performance in that debate. Both of them reinforced those two, that contrast. And so, unsurprisingly, you're looking at, most of the polling since the debate nationwide, that is, has pretty much shown, maybe some slight movement, but very slight. Still a dead heat statistically, no matter, even if you look at some of the ones where Trump's grown a point or two, it's still a dead heat, essentially, when you do the margin of error. I don't suspect that that's going to change. And I don't, by the way, as we're recording this, President Biden's going to be doing a press conference later this afternoon. You'll be listening to this on Friday after that press conference. I doubt the press conference, whatever the performance is going to change any of that. That's we've talked about cross pressure. Usually I talk about it, I would give an example of a woman who's worried about the economy and at the same time concerned about her reproductive freedom, right to have reproductive freedom. And, that's a cross pressure. She may have qualms about Biden on the economy, but have qualms about Trump on abortion bans. And she's, in the end, going to go into that booth and make what for her may be a tough decision. But that's the cross pressure now is exactly what I talked about. 53% of America, or majority of Americans, 53% of independents believe Trump's a threat to democracy. So is there a path to victory for the majority of Americans and the 53% of independents who see the threat of Trump? Can we win that argument? Hell yes. 53% of independents are with us on that. So, and now things are also, we've also talked, Alex, about the whole lag on economic numbers, on how people feel about them. And, as the economy is getting stronger and people go, well, why do people rate Biden so bad on the economy? Inflation. Well, today's CPI numbers printed deflation for the first time since 2020, since before the pandemic. No inflation. In fact, it showed deflation. The economic lag that we've talked about for the last 3, 4, 6 months continues to build.
Yeah, I really like this tweet from our friend Ben Wickler, who's the head of the Wisconsin Dems. He basically put out a bullet list. He said, in case you missed it amongst the media political drama, inflation falling, crime falling, border crossings falling, climate emissions falling, inequality falling, energy production growing, real wages growing, jobs growing, unions growing, stock market growing. I have 10 fingers up. For those of you who are watching this, it's a visual medium, but think about that. And I want to add one more number. And this just came out. I think David Dayen at The Prospect tweeted this, but just 13% of workers in the U.S. are now earning less than $15 an hour. 2 years ago, that number was 31.9%. Even accounting for inflation. And again, 15 an hour in 2024 was like 14 an hour a couple of years ago. But I mean, that is massive, massive progress.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I mean. People can argue and speculate all you want about the best way to consolidate and motivate that pro-democracy majority and the 53% of independents who see Trump's threat to democracy. And we can debate all that. I mean, whether it's Biden staying in or Biden deciding to pass the torch. But either way, that's what we're working with. A majority of Americans are pro-democracy. A majority of Americans realize and believe today, we don't have to convince, they believe today that Trump is a threat to democracy. 53% of independents believe he's a threat to democracy. So now let's do the cross pressure. 53% of independents believe Trump's a threat to democracy. And I don't know what it might have been 56% of them believe, or whatever, 60% believe Biden's too old. Okay, I still think in the end, they may have real concerns about, will Biden be fit a year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now? But they know they've made a decision that Trump isn't fit today, wasn't fit yesterday. And so what I still believe will happen as we move closer to the election, when forced to face, if that's what happens, if they face, that's the decision they face, more Americans will decide they'll take the chance on where Biden is, particularly it's the people around him. And they all know what kind of people Trump will put around himself. And look at, so we'll get into this a little bit more, but I just think that, as Greg Sargent reminds us, quoting him, as I keep arguing, there is still an anti-MAGA majority out there, which is one reason this election is not lost yet. I disagree with him about the lost yet part. I believe that majority, the pro-democracy, anti-MAGA, that views Trump as a major and dangerous threat to democracy, that majority has decided they don't want Trump. And they may have problems with Biden's age. And if Biden decides that he's going to pass the torch, trust me, the Republicans, Trump, MAGA, will attack whoever it is and vilify and demonize and come up with new reasons you shouldn't vote. You should vote to destroy democracy because you don't want to vote for Kamala, or you don't want to vote for, whatever happens here. But they're not going to defeat the people who believe that Trump, and it's a majority in this country, that that believe Trump is a dangerous threat to democracy. So I don't think it's not lost yet. It's which path do we unify around? And I believe that that'll be decided in the next week. That's the reality here. Sargent said the most important result in our new national poll of registered voters is that a majority of 53% of all voters believe that Donald Trump and his administration would represent a grave danger to democracy continuing in the United States if he wins re-election. That's the majority that will vote, that knows right now who's fit and not fit. They may have questions, as I said. Yeah, are they cross-pressured by Trump's threat and concerns about Biden's age? Yes. Do they worry about Biden's fitness a year, 2 years from now? Yes. Do they think Trump is fit now? Hell no. So can we win that fight with Biden's record? Can we win back enough of the base, blacks, Hispanics, and young people to pull out of the dead heat? Yes. And look at who's coming in to support Biden at this moment. It's the Black Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus. That's rippling through those communities. They know who's standing with Biden. And the same, but I believe the same will be true if Trump decides to pass the torch to the next generation of Democratic leadership. And you could make the case that the age issue then would be lifted from the table. That would not be the cross pressure. The GOP will try to create the cross pressure, but the cross pressure of the GOP still bowing to their wannabe emperor will be there. And so, some would argue, hey, we can relieve some of the cross pressure on the age stuff. But trust me, if we go down that path, and by the way, in all of this, I believe Biden will do what's best, what he believes is best for the country. And he knows this better than all of us, that whatever they make of him right now, they will unleash on Kamala or whoever he did pass, when he passes the torch. And so he's going to evaluate that. He's going to listen to what's happening right now, which is another big difference. Trump would never do what was right for the country. He's going to do what's right for him. And of course, his court gestures would enable it and root him on, no matter what it was. That's not the case in the Democratic Party. No one's worried about being put on Biden's retribution list. So I think in the end, we have to pick one path, either or. We have to pick a path. I have my oar in the water either way. But Biden is the decider here. If he is in the fight, we fight. We have to choose a path, and we have to unify behind it soon. I think that'll happen by the end of this week. But pick one. I have my oar in the water either way. But Biden is the decider. If he's in, we fight. And if he passes the torch, we fight. Either way, I think we win. But we have to unify behind one of the two paths. And I think we will by the end of next week.
Can you, before we move on, and there's a few other things we want to get to today, why do you say into next week, Trippi?
I don't think the national polls or this, the press conference is going to change anything. What's going to change, the only thing that's really going to change anything is I believe that most of these members of Congress, most of the challengers in districts where they're trying to defeat a Republican incumbent, most of the Senate, probably all the senators who are in a battle right now, did not poll right after the debate and could not poll or didn't poll during the July 4th holiday for the obvious reasons that you couldn't count on anything, with your sample, given people what they were doing over the July 4th weekend. So I think the majority of them went into the field immediately after the July 4th weekend. I think they are all coming out of the field with their polling now. And if those polls show them losing ground, then the tension and the pressure from within the party on Biden, will increase if they're all getting, bad poll numbers coming out of all this. If they're seeing what we're seeing in national polls, that there isn't much difference in the race, nothing's really changed, that may lighten and lessen their own angst and may tamp down, any concern that they may have, or at least make it sort of release some of the pressure, lessen it. And so, look, I think they're all coming out right now. I think the Biden team is going to hear a lot about that in the Senate luncheon that's happening today as we record this. They're going to get an earful one way or the other. And I think that Biden is going to hear that. He's listening. And I think that, first of all, the other thing I think about all this is I think it's healthy. We're demonstrating that we don't just have blind loyalty to our leader no matter what, that you can call out or doubt, air doubts about your nominee, your president, even the sitting president of the United States, and no one's hiding and running, trying to make or saying sweet nothing so they don't get put on his retribution list. So I think that Biden is going to look at this, and it's going to be his decision. But that pressure is either going to increase substantially as these members and senators and challengers come out of the field with their polls, or they're going to see, like I said, they're going to see, wait a minute, nothing much has changed here. It's not worth the risk of, like I said, just relieve some of that tension, and the unity will be clear by the end of the week. I really believe that this will settle pretty quickly. It may be messy.
I think that's kind of an understatement, brother.
No, but it's healthy. And I believe Joe Biden will do what is best for the country and do what will give us all the best chance to keep Trump from returning to the White House. And I think, look, that's what makes us different. It further makes that contrast. Remember, the 53% of the country that believes Trump is a dangerous threat to our democracy. Here, where no one's questioning. Remember the other side. They pledged blind loyalty to a felon convicted of 34 counts, found liable for sexual assault, and a man who lied with every breath he took for 90 minutes in that debate. And no one's asking him to step down or questioning dear leader. No, because you'd be purged from the party. That's them. And that's the threat to democracy that 53% of the American people view as dangerous. On our side, that's not the case. We're questioning. We're airing our doubts. We're having a debate and discussion about it. Biden's going to listen to it. He's going to make the decision. Like I said, it may be messy, but it's healthy. And I think in that, either way, if Biden decides he's our best shot or he decides to pass the torch, it shows the difference between how the two parties have handled this. And what's more, like I said, democracy is messy, but it's but this this debate I think is good for our party. It will make Joe Biden stronger going into November, and if he decides to pass the torch, we'll be just as strong going into November with how this party makes the decision to move forward with Kamala Harris, who I think would end up winning, even if it was wide open, even if it was a mini primary kind of process. If that's if that's where this ends up going, I think Kamala Harris is likely to win that for the very simple reason that these delegates have all been elected. They're already going to the convention, and they're going to the convention as Biden-Harris delegates.
Right.
And if, so I think Newsom, we have an amazing bench. They can all get in if they want. But I think how Kamala doesn't come out of that kind of a convention with an open fight, but everybody gives speeches, and with that group of delegates, she's got a big edge. And so, look, I don't know which way this is going to go, but it is Biden's decision, and I believe it will be clear within the week. And oars in the water, people. It's time to end the noise and get to work and win.
Joe, zooming out from the whole will he or won't he thing. You mentioned at the top of the show, you found some data this week that I think our listeners would really like. And for once, it's not a head-to-head.
Yeah, no, look, so there's some good news in that abortion is still breaking through where it matters. In a recent Navigator poll, 3 in 5 Americans in battleground districts believe abortion access will be further restricted nationally if Republicans win the next election. 60%. Another big thing this week is I've heard a lot of people saying out loud that Trump is a threat to democracy, even cable pundits. And if you're looking online, the conversation is clearly shifting. Our friend Joe Trippi at Share a Voice, you should subscribe to his newsletter, has been tracking online sentiment this cycle. He found that immigration was pretty much always the top political issue in 2024 so far, both in polling and social media. But that has all changed in July. Now protecting democracy is totally swamping the discussion. That's great. It's clearly tied to the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. The uptick in awareness about Project 2025 has also helped. So we got to keep pushing that stuff, people. And do not underestimate the power of influencers outside your own box.
Joe, you talk about the uptick in awareness. It's kind of like everyone's in their own little bubble, including the New York Times at this point. But don't underestimate, when people who don't normally talk about this stuff start talking about it, people perk their heads up and listen. I mean, Taraji P. Henson, like literally live on the BET Awards, called out Project 2025. And I know Joe points that out as a big reason for the spike. And obviously Republicans are still trying to push immigration. But, it's kind of tough to do when, like, and again, as Ben pointed out earlier, border apprehensions are at a 3-year low. This stuff online is just not sticking, like the whole defending democracy, SCOTUS, the immunity, and most recently Project 2025.
Yeah, Jamala, in a quote, said, if there's a silver lining to the post-debate clouds gathering over the Democratic Party right now, it's that far more attention is being paid to the consequences of a Trump victory. I agree with that. That was the contrast that the Biden people wanted in the debate. And that's why they wanted it that early. Look, it was a disastrous performance for Biden, but in a strange way, they both lost that debate. And I think people haven't paid as much attention, I mean, the press and the pundits haven't, to the damage Trump did to himself and the damage that the SCOTUS immunity ruling sort of piled that on, ratcheted up the danger, I guess is the way I would put it.
Joe has a really good quote too. It was welcome to the campaign for the future, or I think welcome to the campaign for the future is what he said. And my question to you, Joe, is it seemed like up until the debate and even during the debate, it was kind of like both candidates were either running on what they'd done, or in Trump's case, lying about what had happened when he was president. But they weren't really talking or attacking each other's past. They weren't, the focus, both on what they were talking about and how everything's been reported, really wasn't on the future. Do you think Project 2025 kind of coming to the forefront now has changed that?
Yeah, it's clearly happening. 7 in 10, this is again from the Navigator polling, 7 in 10 Americans are still unfamiliar with Project 2025, but it's growing. And after learning more about it, nearly 2 in 3 Americans are broadly opposed to it, which frankly is why Donald Trump's trying to do the like, what? I don't know anything about this.
Right.
He couldn't be lying about that, right? No, 70% of independents are opposed and almost 40% of Republicans are opposed to Project 2025 when they learn about the details. And like I said, more people are learning about him now, more people are focused. And by the way, the implications of Trump imposing this Project 2025 agenda with full immunity to do it, now that the court granted him that, I think is going to be, just raise the concerns even higher. Americans' greatest concerns about Project 2025 are that it is an unprecedented plan to fundamentally give control of government to Donald Trump and roll back and eliminate America's constitutionally protected rights and freedoms. This is some of the best messages about Project 2025 are focused on the impact. Focusing only on the political consequences falls short. So how do we brand it? Project 2025 can best be described as a dangerous takeover that would most benefit Trump and his loyalists and wealthy billionaire donors who are dangerous, power hungry, and extreme. And so and these are all tested things that the Navigator poll tested. Maybe we should put a link to it in our show notes if we remember to do that. But you add that again. Let me read that last part. Project 2025 can best be described as a dangerous takeover that would most benefit Trump and his loyalists and wealthy billionaire donors who are dangerous, power hungry, and extreme. Now, match that up. I mean, again, 70% of independents oppose it, 40% of Republicans, and match that up with the 53% of Americans who believe that Donald Trump represents a dangerous threat to our democracy. Arm him with Project 2025 and a Supreme Court granting him immunity on as long as he's imposing it, as a matter of his official powers, that just scare the living shit out of everybody. And I think that matched up against, but Biden's too old. Will he be fit a couple of years from now, or 3 months from now? Whatever that cross pressure is. I look at the 3.5 years of a president who's now, it looks like, his policies we are getting the soft landing. There is no recession. Inflation not conquered yet, but deflation has actually shown it's for the first time. All the things that that we pointed out about rising wages, et cetera, all that's happening. And so, I'll take the guy with 3.5 years of what we've seen, knowing the people he has around him, the government he's put in place versus the guy who wants to destroy it and is a dangerous threat to democracy on day one, who we can't allow to get anywhere near the White House. That's going to end up being the decision. And I think the more that contrast is clear and the closer we get to the election, I still believe that Trump has got a ceiling. It's still around 45, 46, even after this debate, even the ABC debate, ABC poll today has him at 46. That's a ceiling. He's not getting above it. Biden got to 51 in 2020. You can argue, can we get to 51 with him now? Can we get there with someone else? Guess what? Remember the number 53. 53% of Americans believe Trump is a dangerous threat. Trump's getting to 46. The numbers. This is what I mean when I say don't look at the head. Look at how the numbers synergistically land. He's at 46. 53% of Americans don't want him. Now Biden's getting 46% of them right now. But who's going up from here? I think Biden's got a much better chance at getting to that 53 number than Trump has getting above 46. And by the way, I believe that's true if he decides to pass the torch. And I believe we've got a hell of a bench of new, young Democratic leadership. And by the way, the American people have been saying for a couple of years now, I don't like this choice. Well, it may be the choice that Joe Biden decides is the best way to get there from here to stop Donald Trump from winning. But if he passes the torch, then also we're the one party that tried to give him a different choice than that. So again, either way, I can see how we win. But I could not predict what Joe Biden will do other than I believe he will do what's best for the country. I think that's what he did in 2020. I think that's what he's done throughout his administration. And he's not going to jeopardize that all now by making the wrong decision.
Well, not that I wasn't listening to you close strong, but the New York Times just put out another Ed Board article. It's called Donald Trump is Unfit to Lead. He is dangerous in word, deed, and action. He puts self over country. He loathes the laws we live by. So I think New York Times Ed Board might be the double haters, Joe. Maybe they're the ones the whole time.
Well, but that's my point. At some point, okay, you want Biden to get out. You want Trump to get out. Okay, I get that. But at some point, you got to vote one way or the other. One's going to end democracy. The other, geez, I don't know his age, but he's not a threat to democracy. If anything, he's defended it for not just here, but in Ukraine. I mean, around the world, pulled the alliance together. So my point is that, that's the choice right now. Biden may believe, and rightfully so, perhaps, that that's still the best way to frame this going into November, because he feels he can win that fight. And I don't think he's wrong in that. On the other hand, I think the real question is, in making that fight, do you win it nationally, but you put too many senators and House members in jeopardy because of the makeup of their districts or state? And is it worth perhaps losing the Senate and not gaining back the House? Is there a way that a new generation of Democratic leadership at the top could help bridge that and make November stronger? I honestly believed Joe Biden, if that's what he thinks, he'll do it. He'll do what's right. But I think it's going to come down to this week and what those local House member polls and key Senate numbers look like. They're probably waiting for that. And then does the pressure ratchet up or not? We'll know soon enough. Either way, folks, get your oars in the water. We got a lot of work to do, but we can win this.
Joe, that's a great place to end today.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone, for listening to That Trippi Show. This podcast will always be free with support from our advertisers and is part of Resolute Square. Check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question and a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. I think we'll know a lot more then.
Resolute Square.